All right, we're live. Hey guys, it's Luke here from Patient Rush again, and today I have Ali, who's from up north in Canada. He runs a number of dental clinics, Dental 14, and West Dental 14. And Ali, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate having you here. We know Ali's got a lot of things going on. He's actually just launched a new clinic during all of this, so we'll look to get some gems out of Ali. So thanks a lot, Ali. Let us know. Give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into the industry, and we can go from there, mate.
Thanks for having me, Luke. I'm originally from Pakistan and I came to Canada. I graduated from NYU, New York University, in 2015. And after that, I was looking at opportunities, where to go, where to head, where to do stuff. So I went over. There was a buddy of mine. He told me about this small town up in the north, way north, right? And I always wanted to be in a small town. So I was like, you know what? What the hell? I'm going to sign a 2-year contract. I'm just going to go there and then move out from there, right? So as soon as I went there, it dawned on me that smaller towns, people are more easygoing, there's a lot need. A lot of people want to be in urban places, for example, in New Zealand, everyone wants to concentrate in Auckland, right? But there's a lot more opportunity if you go around. So that's what I saw and did. And then it's funny, I saw these small towns that were close to the city where I was at. So we started talking to one person, and that person is retiring, and the other person is retiring, and they're like one office in a town of this many, right? So that's how it all started, right? I acquired first practice. I never thought that I'm going to own like multiple and all those things. I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest, right? It's funny. When I bought the first practice, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, that's it. I'm done. I have one practice and that's it. And then I get a call from someone else who's a friend of the guy that I bought from. And he's like, hey, you seem like a nice guy. And I'm not too far from you. You have an associate as well working. Why don't you buy me out as well? I'm thinking of retirement and I'll do a year with you. Super nice guy. And so I was like, you know what the heck? Let me just do it, right? I looked at the numbers. I didn't know anything about the numbers at that point, like how the cash flow is calculated and what's a good opportunity. I just jumped in. So I made a lot of mistakes during that thing. But what I found out was it's so much better if you are in secondary or tertiary markets right now in these days. Mm-hmm. The opportunities there, I think it was the best decision that I made, right? So I'm never going back to like a major center. I think I'm going to stay with these niche areas where it's harder for staffing and issues, but it's really rewarding when it comes to that, and you're dealing with patients on a very close corners, you're seeing them all the time. Then after that, I sold my practices last year, and I decided I should go and move into not primary markets like Toronto or Vancouver, but at places like Saskatoon, Medicine Hat, or Grand Prairie itself. Those places there's a lot more competition there, right? So that's where we come into the new concept of dentistry, the new marketing. So there's not one thing that we can do, but there are different things that we do in order to stand out.
Yeah, fantastic. That's super interesting. So what do you think's the main factor for these secondary markets having more opportunity? Is it less competition?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I lost the last part.
What do you think is the main factor that makes these secondary markets, work better and more? Is it the fact more opportunity? Do you feel like it's because there's less competition, or what's the main factor you think, rather than the big centers?
Oh no, you'll be surprised. Nowadays, competition is increasing everywhere across the board. Okay, there are towns that are 1,000 people, and there are 3 dental offices showing up there, right? So it's a slightly less competition. The practice model has changed a lot. Like when I was in Auckland, right? So in Canada is huge. So across the board, there is differences, right? In places like Toronto, they're sort of going the way towards Auckland is, right? Like when I was in Auckland, I saw practices. They were 2 ops, 3 operatory practices. The dentist is working himself. They're not like bigger practices. Whereas if you come to Alberta has practices that I've seen with my own eyes. They're like 19 operatories. Okay, they're like 7 dentists working out of them. Okay, they're like 10 hygienists working for them. They're open like 7 days a week. So they are very aggressive. It's more about you have to hit the market, and it's a combination of a lot of stuff of what you're offering, who's offering that, what timings you're open, what insurance, how can you make it more convenient for the patient. If you can do that and you can hit that market, the convenience factor is the most important thing, right?
Right.
It's changing more from, it used to be destination dentistry. Like you used to be 20 years ago, you were on the 4th floor of a medical building, where there were 3 dentists sharing the same space.
Yes.
Nowadays, it's more retail. You have to be there to show up. If you're on this, I never buy a practice that's on the 2nd floor. I never buy a practice and I know it sounds cliche, but in my location, I'm never going to buy a practice that's in a medical center. Okay.
Right.
I would rather be in a place where it's more posh, which is more accessible, which is more appealing in the way that it looks rather than anything else. Because people, the more they see that, the more they come, right?
Yes.
So secondary market, getting back to your question, the secondary markets are as competitive now, if not more so. We have seen that happening a lot because people realize that these markets are good. Plus, a lot of dentists don't want to go into those tertiary markets like smaller towns. So they think that they can go into the secondary markets and make good money there. But it turns out everyone is thinking the same way. So those markets are getting saturated as well.
Sure. Yeah, fascinating. And so, expanding on that, so what has worked for you to grow your clinics and get your business to the level it is now? Like what's worked?
So the way that I see things is, first of all, I never advise new guys that are coming into this to open up, and it's a personal thing and people can disagree. I don't advise them to open up a brand new practice. Okay, you need a lot of money to open up a brand new practice. I would suggest you need at least sufficient cash flow in a practice. So buying a running practice is the best thing to do.
Sure.
And if it's not run properly, that's even better. Okay. I try to find practices that go in and I see that they were not run proficiently, right? For example, what your company does is just amazing, right? Because you are not only expanding the group as you go along, but you're also tapping into the patients that the original practice has lost.
Exactly.
And that I find is more of a growth rather than acquiring a practice and spending money just on getting new patients. Let's just get new patients ready to gain those patients back that you had. You should be looking at the payroll. You should have percentages of what the cost is. Cut the cost. So there's an exercise I'm going to tell everyone, whoever is listening, that I do whenever I acquire a practice is, in my mind, I look at everything, and as small as the phone bill, right? And I say, okay, I sit with my manager and I'm like, our objective is to cut 10% of everything. Okay. How do we do that? So we go over, we call the phone companies, we call the utility companies, we try to find better deals. That 10%, if a practice is doing $1 million and its expenses are like 500, that's 50 grand that you just saved over a year just by cutting 10%, right? And there's small things like, oh, the previous owner didn't think about, they just got a package, right? I bought a practice, it's funny, and it had the phone bills were like coming at like $900 a month, man. And I'm like, how is that happening? They didn't have a long distance plan. So anyone that was calling from anywhere, I'm like, guys, we're living in 2019, 2020. How do we not have long distance plans on our phones?
Yeah.
But it was a practice that was 50-year-old, right? And they were just doing it though. They didn't even know, right? So you'll be surprised as you have to imagine that the person who was doing the job before you did not know what they were doing. And I know it sounds like condescending in a way, but I look at it that way and I say, okay, what can I do to make it better? You know?
That's fantastic. That's so good. Yeah, and it makes so much sense because if only, like you say, only 10%, and you trim the fat, and then you have all of that there to then put back into more growth sort of activities and bringing new people in and making the service better and things like that. Eh? That's a little gem. Fantastic. So, and then how's it been going the last, this year so far, Ali, in terms of, what we're all experiencing with COVID? How has that impacted your clinics and how have you adjusted?
It was a scary time, to be honest. Okay. I sold a group of practices last year, knock on wood. So my friends were a bit like, oh, did you know something was happening? I didn't know. I just got lucky, to be honest. Like, I'm not that smart to see that coming. The other lucky thing for us was, like, even in this practice, when we built like a general pedo practice. So one of my partners, who's a pediatric specialist, he said that, oh, for peds, we need closed ops. So we built closed ops to begin with. And then COVID hit, and then we are like, oh, thank God, we don't have to spend a ton of money to close the ops, because a lot of people have open concepts. And I think that's going to change now as we move along, because they need to put sheets and everything around them. So COVID was surprisingly, it was a bad time, very uncertain. But once we open up, what we have seen is, it's sort of funny. We weren't expecting, summers are usually slow in Canada. But what we have seen is the opposite effect, because we have had our best months in Medicine Hat ever for the summer. And I think part of the reason is because people aren't traveling anymore. So they're staying at home. So before, in the summer, they would go to Mexico like you are. But right now, they're just staying in Canada. So they're like, yeah, no. And they have a lot of savings as well. Like, they're not spending money on a lot of stuff right now. So they're spending on dental. So they're coming in. So it's been pretty good, scary, but good. I think the biggest problem that we faced was the PPE. So for that, what we have done is, there are different companies out there. They're doing different things. I think the way of the future, and my suggestion is getting stuff like we one-time expense was, we just got, instead of using disposable, we had washer and dryers installed. And we started using like reusable gowns and stuff, right? Yes. So that saves a lot of cost for us. So one-time cost, and you just use, and there's small things that you can do that way, where you can just keep using them.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, great idea. Fantastic. And then in terms of, we touched on a little bit around, some of your philosophies on marketing, but how important is marketing for you, and what kinds of marketing do you do?
Marketing is huge, man. Like, it's huge. I'll give you one example, right? We saw this one patient that came into our office, right? And I'm like, how did you find us, right? And he was like, man, how could I not find you? Because he was like, I was on Facebook and I saw your ad, and then my tooth was bothering me. So I Googled dentist, and your ad was right up there on Google. Then as I was leaving my house and I was driving, I saw a signboard out there that has your dental thing. And I went and I checked my mail and I saw a flyer. So he's like, from every which way that I can think of, it worked, right? But I think, so whenever you open up, whenever I take an office, and that's my own personal philosophy, what I do is I set up a budget, right? And the budget can be anything. And sorry. So there are different things that you can, when you're creating those budgets. For instance, like what we do is, I'll give you an example. What we do is the x-rays that the hygienists take, we use that as our, okay. But then again, we have a lot of hygienists, right? So that is our budget for marketing. We set it up. Every place is different, okay? So I have a buddy of mine. I'm not going to name names here, but his practice was a $12 million practice. It was grossing $12 million a year. It was a huge practice, one of the biggest in Canada. And I was talking to him like, what's the best thing that worked for you? And he was like, it was flyers. Like he was just sending flyers, right? Bought the practice in Alberta, and he did the same things. He wanted to grow that practice the same way. He used the same exact strategies for marketing of that practice. It didn't work. The practice didn't grow at all. So what I have realized is for the first 3 months, we try everything because every area is different. Not everything works. Some places are very tech savvy. Some places people are not. People like old school.
Yeah.
Some places your Google marketing is going to work. Some places your flyers are going to work. At the end of the day, the most important thing that's going to work for you is going to be the word of mouth, right? That I've seen it, experienced it, because marketing is going to bring people in, but then people blame the marketing company when it starts going down. What they don't realize is it's not your job, Luke, to do the filling on the patient or to deal with the patient. Your job is to just bring the person in. The rest is on the team to wow them, right? So I would say right now, the things that I have noticed common throughout is Google and SEO. Like that is it. Like that's the most important thing that you can do at this point.
Yeah.
Facebook has been okay but the retention rate with Facebook, I haven't seen that much. Like I've seen like people who walk in, there's a different sort of client that comes through Facebook.
Right.
There's a different sort of that comes through Google, right?
Yeah.
And there's a completely different sort of a client that comes through the flyers. Like it's like mostly older people about to, in the retirement age or close to retirement. They're looking at those flyers, price matching. A lot of immigrants, and especially in New Zealand, you'll see a lot of immigrant population coming through the flyer system. Okay. If you are in a city where we have been, where there is a lot of transition going on between people, like if Grand Prairie, for example, in Alberta is a oil and gas city. So every year you would say 15,000 people are coming in and out of the city. So if you're in a city like that, Google and your reviews are really good, right? So you need to have a very good reputation management companies. I don't know if you guys do that. Reputation management I find is the best because my wife doesn't buy a $10 of stuff from Walmart if there's not a good review for that, So reviews are very, very important. How do you do that? I don't think a dentist can handle that. I think there must be companies like yourself which are focused in on how to make it easier for the patient, because everyone that walks out is happy.
Yes.
But people often write reviews when they're not happy. Nobody likes a review because they're happy, right? You have to push them a little bit.
Yeah.
And that has to be done through a third party company so that the office is a bit separated from that. Yes. So if a company like yours comes in and says, hey, we need this. So I think the point being is the world has gone and shifted towards Google and stuff.
Yeah.
I would say if you want to spend on one thing you ask me, I would say it's your SEO.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Some great points there, Ali. You're right. The intent on Google is certainly for dentistry is a lot higher, isn't it? Because you look at the Facebook advertising, it's more of a interruptive based type of advertising, whereas someone's going on Google searching for Invisalign or dental implants or whatever it is, their intent is very high.
See, the other problem that's happening with Google and SEO is, and I feel like a lot of people are being duped with a lot of the companies, to be honest. I feel they don't know, because people don't understand how an SEO works. As a dentist, I know like this much about SEO. I don't even know how it works. I don't know how my GMB business listing is working, right? Yes. I get a report at the end of the month from some guy who says, oh yeah, it's performing well. And I'm like, sure, buddy, good. I'll pay you $2,000, But I think the most important thing is with the Google SEO stuff, people are coming in. You don't need 50 words. You don't need 30 words or whatever. You need the right words, right? We did Google ad. I'll give you an example for our pediatric site. Okay. And we were spending a lot of money on that. And it wasn't coming back to us. Okay. Because people were not searching. It only comes up if someone specifically search pediatric dentistry.
Yeah.
People were searching kids dentistry. A lot of people were going towards. So you need to have people like yourself who deal with dental only, but not companies that are dealing with a restaurant and what. Like they need to be more specialized, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of research needs to be done into what company are you investing with. Otherwise, you're just going to lose your money.
Yeah, dead right. It's a huge issue in this industry, and we hear it all the time. You know, when we speak to people every day. You know, we speak to patient-based businesses every day, and that's the number one thing. They're like, I've been burned. You know, I've paid someone a whole bunch of money, and I didn't get anything for it. It's super common, and that's why we run a free trial whereby we set 15 appointments up front, no cost, no obligation, no nothing, just so that you can see, the prospect can see, look, these guys can do what they say, they're trustworthy, they get to experience working with us for a couple of weeks. And at the end of the day, it's trust and confidence in the partnership, and then it's results. So both of those things need to be in place, and without it, there's no point. So you're dead right. You've got to do your research, and you've got to make sure that the company provides measurable, show you the ROI, show you what you're getting for your money. Otherwise, it's
Exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then last thing here, Ali, is there anything that you would suggest to someone maybe getting started or who is trying to get to that next level? Like, you've given us a lot of good stuff, but is there anything that comes to mind, in particular, that you would say to someone getting started or trying to grow over and above what you've said already?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would say to anyone who's doing anything is, right, I think if you're dealing with a marketing company and if you want to do marketing, you need to be working with someone with a personal reference. Okay, that's the one thing, right? Like I got introduced to you by a dentist in New Zealand, right? And he showed me the numbers. He was like, "Yeah, this is where I was. This is where I'm at right now, right?" And they're one of the biggest groups in Auckland, if I'm not wrong. I don't know if they are or not. I'm not going to name anyone, but I think so. That shows me a lot of confidence. That's number one thing, right? The second thing that I would suggest is, guys, if you're starting out there, you can't take anything lightly. Okay, this is what I tell everyone: is nobody cares for your money as much as you do. Okay, so if you have a manager or anyone, and they're nice people out there, right? But they're not going to hurt that much as you would. So I want the dentist to be very involved with the day-to-day operation and looking up everything, right? People need to learn how to do the numbers. Okay, like dentists don't do numbers very well. They don't do percentages. They just look at how much money we are making. That's not the right criteria. You should be going in as detailed as possible when it comes to the numbers of things, right? Because one small thing, it can just completely destroy your cash flow. So if anyone wants any help, and that's an offer to everyone, right? Like you have my contact, Luke. If anyone approaches you, you can definitely give them my contact if they need any help with anything. Like I love to do that, and it's not at any cost to them. And they can ask me like appraisals, getting to know about practices and what we are looking for in terms of expanding. But I would suggest it's all about finding that right opportunity. Like where in that specific market, where is that opportunity, and the right partners at the same time, right? Like who are the guys? You don't have to make your own mistakes. If Luke has done this thing for the last 10 years, he has made enough mistakes for the both of us. Okay, so I might as well call an expert to help me out in a situation than try to make my own mistake and save that $1,000, but you're losing 10,000 at the end of the day, and then you're like, oh, I should have called him in the first place, right? So that's my biggest advice, because people try to be cheap. A little time they're trying to save cents, but they lose in the long term, right? So that's why there are companies like yourself, and there are other consulting companies that are there that they should be relying on. And I feel a lot of the times people cheap out on that, and they don't do that, right? And I'm not trying to plug in, like everyone who's listening should know that you're not paying me to say anything like that. Okay, I'm just being very honest here that get professionals to help you. If you can't do something, get professionals to help you so that you have someone to point your finger to. You know, like, hey, you're to blame.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic advice. I hope everyone picked that up. I think the taking on professionals, but then also knowing your numbers is so important, and it's overlooked a lot, I think, across the board. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ali. Really appreciate it. I enjoyed this chat, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. Take care. Bye.